Welcome back. The Kings of the North. It's good to be back. Lesmerises, Bill Landis. Landis, anything exciting happening over the weekend?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. It was a good weekend. I want to note off the top that I'm not hungover. I have a little bit of a cold, so that's why I sound this way.
My team won and my body rejected it. Wrong. We'll have some Super Bowl thoughts because we have some Super Bowl thoughts to share. And occasionally, Landis, I'm like, we know all about sports. Let's just make it an all sports show. Do they have many of those? Like, if we just made this an all sports YouTube show / podcast, I feel like there's a niche in the market for two guys to just talk about everything and not really know that much about it.
Yeah, I think we would revolutionize sports media as people know it if we decided to go down that road.
Let's put a pin in that.
Okay.
We'll figure it out by the end of the show. For now, this remains a Northern college football show where we focus on 28 Northern teams, and we're doing the ultimate Northern schedule today. We did it last year. We're not calling it's not the ultimate Northern road trip, because then I think we have to get into logistics of like, could you actually make it from this game to this game? And would you fly or would you drive? Or are you going over a mountain? Are you going from seaboard to seaboard? It's more like the game that you can focus on from your couch of like, wow, I live KOTN. I love Northern ball. The South can cram it. I am peripherally aware of Southern college football existing, but I'm focused on the North. What are the games that I'm going to really need to watch each week? That's more what it's like, Bill, although I do have a couple driving caveats in here.
Yeah, I think it's fine to try to find ways to actually make it happen logistically if you wanted to, but we're also not expecting someone to, for instance, go to a game in Columbus, Ohio on a Saturday and then be in South Florida on Sunday for a game. Like, if you can do it, great, but you don't have to do it.
If someone does it this year, please tell us.
Yeah.
And we'll have you on.
Yeah.
We'll have you on the show. I also have the what we did last year for our picks, because we did last year, I think we wound up at 5 of the games that we picked. So like that we went to in person. So it's not nothing, but then there's also sometimes where you like pick a game and then it's like, oh, well, actually that turned out not to be where you wanted to be in week 12, for instance. But we're going to start off with some news around the North, still coaching stuff. Another offensive coordinator move. We're up to 20 of 56. It was 17, then it was 19, now 20 of 56 coordinators in the North have changed since last season. But we're not starting with a coordinator, Landis, because this one might be even bigger. And there's a little bit, I certainly saw at least a little bit on Twitter of like, oh, it goes around, comes around. We're stealing from each other. And I also saw people saying, stop stealing from each other, Northern teams. Steal from the South. But here's the problem. What actually happens is the South steals from the North, because I do think, do you agree with this statement? Northern college football does a better job of developing coaches than Southern college football.
Ooh, yeah, sure. Yes.
I'm a little sick and I don't want Doug to yell at me in the first 4 minutes of the show. So yeah, I'll agree with the North is better statement, but like we can dig into that some other time.
We can.
Jaywan Sider moving from Penn State to Notre Dame as a running backs coach. One of the very best running backs coaches in the country. Notre Dame lost a really good running backs coach and Dylan McCullough, who went to the Vegas Raiders. Is that right? Went back to the NFL? Right.
Yep.
So this is a little bit, Penn State took Ohio State's defensive coordinator. Now Notre Dame is taking Penn State's running backs coach. What do you think of this?
I really like the way Marcus Freeman goes about putting together his staff. He's quite aggressive for a young coach who I would imagine doesn't have a super extensive Rolodex of like very obvious guys to go bring in and join his coaching staff. This is a heck of a move, I think, for Notre Dame. I think Jaywan Sider is one of the, top 5 running back coaches in the country. Notre Dame, I think, lost one of those in Dylan McCullough and then replaced him with a similar and perhaps even slightly better candidate, because Jaywan Sider is a very good recruiter, probably a better recruiter than Dylan McCullough is. So this is great for Notre Dame. It's a little odd to me that Sider would leave Penn State, because I don't think anybody would disagree with Penn State having the best running back room in the country, right? With Nick Singleton and Katron Allen back. And certainly Notre Dame's is very good with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, but I would probably take Penn State's room over Notre Dame's room. And it's not like Jaywan Sider is getting elevated to like play caller or something like that at Notre Dame. And I would imagine that Penn State could pay Sider as much as Notre Dame. So the move is a little puzzling to me in that regard. But what matters most, I guess, for Notre Dame is losing a very good running backs coach and getting a very good running backs coach to replace him.
Can I preface this by saying, like, I don't know. And maybe we could just make a cut, Mike, and I'll just put that in front of everything I say. I don't know. But teams still have pools of money for assistant coaches, do they not? Like, are we assuming they operate that? Not in a world where it feels like there's money everywhere, but actually the whole deal is when you're starting to actually pay players, you can't maybe completely throw money around with your coaching staff like you once did. And I do think, I'm not saying they're related for sure, but it's like, hey, Jim Knowles got all this money to go to Penn State. And then there are guys who are at Penn State saying, like, man, I've been here a long time and done a pretty good job. They sure threw a lot of money at this new guy. And then Marcus Freeman maybe is like, what if I went in there and said, you're doing a great job there. It's really unfortunate when you don't reward your own and you kind of go to the outside and lure the news. Like you get a phone offer, right? Don't you get mad when it's like, this is my cell phone bill, but if you're a new customer, it's a third as much. It's like, what about me?
Yeah. Right.
We got cell phone envy in the coaching ranks now. And if I were Marcus Freeman, I would play on that in going after somebody like this.
Yeah, maybe. I used to work at a place where like they would charge longtime subscribers more money than new people that got charged like $1 a month. So like I get it.
Anyway, this is a big move now. James Franklin's going to have to go figure something else out. And I think there were reports that
I bet Ohio
State's
State's running backs coach's name comes up in Penn State's search, and maybe like Tony Alford's name comes up because these four programs can't seem to stay away from each other when it comes to filling out their coaching staffs.
I mean, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Ohio State's running backs coach went to Michigan. So Ohio State took Oregon's running backs coach. And now Penn State's running backs coach is going to Notre Dame. So maybe Penn State will try to get Ohio State's running backs coach.
Yeah. And Tony Alford's name was at least part of this Notre Dame search too. In reporting, I think from Bruce Feldman and Pete Sampson at The Athletic, like that Tony Alford used to work at Notre Dame, then was at Ohio State and now at Michigan. And I think was thought maybe to go back to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame took Penn State's running back coach instead. There's a lot of, I mean, they're good coaching staffs. I get it, but it is funny to me how often those four programs seem to intersect when trying to fill coaching staff positions.
Yeah. Okay. More stuff. NFL. This is the coordinator stuff I'm talking about. Connor Riley, who was the offensive coordinator for Kansas State this year for a year, been the offensive line coach there. We had talked about this when we were running through how to hire a coordinator. Hey, sometimes if you're like a good Power 4 program, but maybe not at the top of the heap, developing guys from within is really good. When Colin Klein went to Texas A&M last year, Chris Kleiman at Kansas State promoted Connor Riley, the offensive line coach, to be the offensive coordinator. They also brought in Matt Wells, a former head coach, to be the co-OC. Connor Riley is leaving for the Dallas Cowboys. He is leaving to be the offensive line coach, and officially on Monday morning, it had been reported it would happen. Chris Kleiman made it official. Matt Wells is going to be the play caller now. So he was co-OC. Now he's the play caller. This is hard when the NFL starts taking your guys, but it's almost like, again, we talked about it with Leipold. I think it's the same thing with a guy like Chris Kleiman. This is the exact tier. Matt Campbell, it's happened a ton. Like this is the exact kind of program where having your assistant stolen away is the most frustrating ultimate compliment.
Yes.
We like the cut of your jib. You know ball. You give guys opportunities. They do a good job. Thank you very much. We're going to pay them more. Goodbye. And there's nothing you can do except to continue to develop people. So I know what, Chris Kleiman, and again, I thought this is, you bring in a guy like Matt Wells, who's been around the block, to be the co-OC last year, getting ready, probably thinking to yourself, I don't know how long Connor Riley's going to stay. So here we are. It's just another thing for Kleiman to deal with, but it feels like the reasonable solution to a tough problem.
I think it's a reasonable solution, if not a good one, to have Matt Wells sitting there, former head coach who was a good enough offensive coordinator prior to being a head coach that he got head coaching jobs. And it didn't really work for him at Texas Tech, but like his last year at Utah State, their offense was quite good with Jordan Love at quarterback. And he's also Avery Johnson's position coach. So that's great. I do wonder if this could be a bit disruptive though, losing Connor Riley. Connor Riley has been with Chris Kleiman for 11 years coaching his offensive line. Going back to North Dakota State and then at Kansas State. And he's a very good offensive line coach. It's a foundational piece of what Chris Kleiman wants to his program to be, and now you have to find that replacement. I almost think finding the offensive line coach replacement is going to be more daunting than finding a new play caller. It's the third time I think in 4 years that Chris Kleinman's had to find a new play caller. But I'm going to be wondering a little bit about Kansas State's offensive line, wanting to see how they fill that coaching staff position, and then what that looks like on the field, because Riley was an excellent offensive line coach.
Assistant coaches don't matter. They're replaceable. You move them in, you move them out.
Mm-hmm.
I am considering letting some of this assistant coach movement in the North affect my view of teams for 2025.
Oh, wow.
There's like, I have to have a conversation with myself about like, am I just like refuting my core principle of college football analysis? Assistant coaches don't matter. Or am I just like acknowledging like maybe some really, really special guys who did move on? I don't know. Will it affect you? 20 out of 56? Now it feels like a lot.
I mean,
17,
well, no, because I
don't know. This is
I
normal?
I think about it differently.
Oh, you already did.
So yeah, I already did take it into consideration. Yeah.
Maybe I'll do that. I think over the course of this show, we already share a brain. I think we're revealing that it's mostly my brain tapping your brain on the shoulder. Hey, Philly Billy's brain. What's going on over there? So we haven't talked about this. This did happen late last week. So what happens when you do 2 shows a week? You got to catch up. Ryan Day got a raise, $12.5 million a year. Had been the 5th highest paid coach, around $10 million. Now he's going to make 12.5. Only Kirby Smart is making more. This is the USA Today coaching salary database for head coaches last year. Private schools, like you can't get the stuff from them. Sometimes like the really good reporters get like the tax returns and stuff, but it's not like the same thing as like open records, give me your coaching contract. There are reports that Marcus Freeman's new deal with Notre Dame has him around $9 million a year. So let's keep that in mind. But otherwise, last year, Kirby Smart, 13.3. Dabo over 11. That's Georgia and Clemson. Steve Sarkisian, Texas, 10.6. Lincoln Riley, USC, 10 million. Ryan Day, 10 million. Mike Norvell, Florida State, 10 million. Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, 10 million. Brian Kelly, LSU, almost 10 million. Mark Stoops, Kentucky, 9 million. That's a joke. Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, 9 million. Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri, 9 million. Josh Heupel, Tennessee, 9 million. And let's throw Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, 9 million in there. That's 13 guys, 2 guys in the North in the top 13, because the South throws money around like maniacs.
Yeah, not bad. Be like a mid-tier SEC coach, get you $9 million a year.
Can you believe it? It's like, whoa.
I got to update my resume.
I mean, everybody had Missouri was a preseason playoff pick last year. How can you not pay the Missouri coach $9 million? What are we doing? Kentucky won 7 games. Kentucky beat Ole Miss and won 4 games. How can you not pay that guy $9 million a year? They're drunk. And the problem is their ludicrous throwing around of money affects the market, because we're in a capitalist society. And when they're nuts down there, then the agents up here are like, well, I don't know. There's a school down there that's going to go crazy and throw money. Just wait. Oh, my God. Every time an SEC coach gets fired, every decent coach in the North gets $1 million raise. So this, I guess, what do we think of Ryan Day getting 12.5?
Whatever the market is, that he should probably be second behind Kirby and close to him. I think those 2 guys are quite clearly the top 2 head coaches in the sport right now. Because Dabo also has a national title, but his star, in my opinion, appears to be fading a little bit. So I think Ryan Day should be ahead of him. So whatever the number has to be to make him the number 2 highest paid head coach in the country, I think that's where Ryan Day belongs.
And it's just one of those things where it's like people rip James Franklin. Made the Final Four. James Franklin, he's no Mark Stoops. Like, really? Look, what are we doing? Oh, if only Penn State could be as good as Missouri. Wouldn't that be awesome? God,
Stoops makes more than
Franklin
Franklin.
Yes. According to this thing, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they. I don't know.
I thought Franklin was north of 10.
Oh, did he get a raise? Oh, congratulations to him. It's not my chart. I'm not smart enough to make a chart.
We just read them on the internet. We don't make them.
We don't, and then we make fun of people who do make them.
Yeah.
Biff Poggi John will be happy about this. He's wanted us to talk about this. Biff Poggi, who is he's more a guru than a coach. He was Jim Harbaugh's guy.
I would say so. He was 6-16 at Charlotte. So
he was 6-16. It's like this guy has changed the face of Michigan football. Then he went and did his own thing and was terrible. Now he's back. So anyway, everybody likes him because he's gregarious, but he seems like a guy who coaches coaches. So he was like the only guy, and everybody loves to write stories about these guys. Nobody can tell Jim Harbaugh the truth except Biff. And plus his name's Biff. So you get bonus points for being named Biff. He does seem like a very swell fella. So anyway, he was next to Jim Harbaugh, but then, by the way, he left Jim Harbaugh, and then Jim Harbaugh won a national championship and went undefeated without him. So it's like, what happened? It's like they were fine. He's back. And it actually, I think, is a bigger deal that he's back with Sharon Moore. Like, this guy is he's a presence, right? This is what he's going to be in the building. He's going to coach the coaches. He's going to just like be a guy, a sounding board, maybe not a yes man, like a guy who will tell a coach the truth. He's back at Michigan. He had been at Michigan in 16, then in 20 and 21. Then he went to be the head coach at Charlotte in 22 and 23. He got fired at the end of the 23 season, and now he's back. No, he went in 23 and 24. Now, so he just got fired last year. Now he's back. The bottom line is he's back at Michigan, and it's probably a good thing for that staff.
Probably. I do like it. Could it be at all problematic for a young coach to have somebody like that in that role? Like for Jim Harbaugh to have someone there to like, he's like the right-hand man. He's the sounding board, but like everyone knows it's Jim Harbaugh's program. Jerome Moore has only been doing this for a year. And I do wonder if having a presence like that could be detrimental. If if wires get crossed and people are like, well, okay, who am I supposed to go to with a problem here? Am I supposed to go to Jerome Moore? Am I supposed to go to Biff Poggi? And I guess I'm expressing concern about the worst possible outcome of all this. I think it probably will be a good thing to help Sharon Moore, like to give that Michigan probably some stronger recruiting ties to the DMV area where Biff was a high school coach for a long time. So I think it's good. I just I find myself questioning after the fact, like, okay, Michigan won the national title after he left, and when he went out on his own, he sucked. So like, what is actually the impact of Biff Poggi? I don't know.
And to be honest, and this is, again, there are a lot of similarities with Ryan Day to Urban Meyer, I think, and Sharon Moore to Jim Harbaugh. And so much of when Ryan Day took over for Urban Meyer was like, you're keeping, and he kept a lot of Urban Meyer's important guys. He kept the strength coach who's still there. He kept the recruiting coordinator who's still there. But yet you wanted to shed some of that and get out of the shadow. So to have like Harbaugh's right-hand guy come back is like, okay, but also I do think Sharon Moore, like bringing in Chip Lindsey, like that's a new move, right? Like, and again, Harbaugh took so much of what was there, including the good strength coach, that Sharon Moore, I think, has had to be more on his own from the jump than Ryan Day was initially. So I do think it can be a fine line to walk for a guy succeeding a successful coach of wanting to establish his own identity, but also not throw away the things that worked in a culture. So I'm curious about this. I think in the end, more good, but you've put me on alert for Michigan being over-biffed.
As long as Biff doesn't try to stage a coup, I think it's okay. I think they're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's like one of those. Yeah, it's like, calm down, everybody. Biff is here, right? We don't need a Biff is here, right? We don't need the Alexander Haig moment for the people who are old. I think it's good. And I do think any young coach sounding boards are good. Guys who have been around the block are good, and just like some of the stuff, like the stuff that Sharon Moore is navigating when he was like, if he could have just had Biff with him there last year, when it's like, my offensive coordinator is terrible. What am I going to do? Right. And again, but on the other hand, Sharon Moore was incredibly decisive and made a move the day after the season ended and also got that program together and beat Ohio State and Alabama at the end of the year when it felt like that was heading south. So there's some things that went wrong, but I actually thought by the end of the year, like Sharon Moore showed some chops, some head coaching chops to not let that season get away.
I thought so. Yeah. I think decisive staff moves, the wins they got at the end of the year, the recruiting wins they got at the end of the year, like getting some of the NIL stuff situated. Organization, I think, is like an underrated characteristic when people think about like how good a coach is, and Sharon Moore, at least from the outside, seems rather organized.
All right, Colorado keeps making interesting moves. One thing we got Robert Livingston, who was, I think, in the end, like there's some of the stuff. I guess I don't know if there are still people who aren't believers in Deion Sanders and stuff. Like he really, I think, is done a very interesting job of assembling a staff, right? And this Robert Livingston hire last year from the Bengals, again, talking about like an outside guy who hadn't called plays, was a position coach in the NFL, comes in and did a really good job last year. He got an extension. That's good. They also hired Marshall Faulk as a running back coach. He's famous. And Andre Giroud as the assistant offensive line coach. He's another NFL guy. It's just an interesting mix that's continuing there, Bill, of famous NFL players getting a chance to coach and it feeling like it working out, but also having some real tentpole guys who have been around the block. Pat Shurmur there is the OC. Like this is, I think Deion Sanders kind of has a hang for this. He's doing a good job with the staff.
It's not the worst play to sort of like bring the NFL to Boulder, right? And I think they have to build now like some draft development capital on top of this that they'll start to get obviously this year with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, but it has to be more than those two guys moving forward. But I think it's a heck of a sales pitch for Deion to say like, hey, our OC and DC spent time in the NFL. I'm actually surprised they were able to hold on to Robert Livingston. I thought maybe the NFL might come back for him or somebody else might try to poach him, and now I think he's the highest paid assistant in the history of Colorado football. So he got a nice payday out of it. Marshall Faulk is a legend. Andre Giroud is like a very good NFL offensive lineman who's early in his coaching career. I think he's only ever coached in the XFL, but they're doing an interesting thing with their offensive line too. They had Phil Lodeholt for 1 year, and he left to go to Mississippi State. So now they're going to have like a 3-man offensive line coaching thing going on with Andre Giroud and Greg Hageman, who is like, or George Hageman, excuse me, who was like the development of like culture and leadership or something. When Deion first hired him, but now he's going to be an assistant offensive line coach. And Hageman and Giroud played next to each other on the Cowboys offensive line. And then they're promoting another like younger coach named Gunnar White there to help coach the O-line too. So I think it's going to have to be a program that is that needs to show developmental chops and an ability to get guys ready for the NFL if it wants to sustain.
Yeah.
And this seems like a pretty good way to do that.
And this is one of those, like Washington made a big deal, and I thought it made sense. I was like, hey, we're like the NFL place because our coordinators are the sons of NFL head coaches. And Deion's like, we have Hall of Famers everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't walk down the hallway without running into a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Actually, we're
Warren
the
Sapp's
NFL
there
place.
too. We didn't mention Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp's a defensive quality control coach.
So, now, you can't just be like, hey, guys who haven't really coached, but you want to come hang out because you played in the league. But if you mix that with some
a little bit of a
coaches,
there's a little bit of a line there, I think. And it's happening a lot. Like there are just like, hey, famous NFL guy, do you want to come coach? Like Deshaun Jackson and Mike Vick got head coaching jobs this year. Like there's I do think you have to be careful always doing that, but Deion does seem to have a nice mix of it in Colorado.
Everything's a stew. Every staff is a stew. And so, but for a long time, everybody was using the same ingredients, right? Let's be honest. Everybody was using the same ingredients. So it has to be a mix. It can't be one flavor. But to like try some new ingredients and making a mix, I'm like, let's try that. So, and I think Deion might be onto something here. You want to talk about the Birds?
Sure. What do you want to talk about? They won.
I thought that Super Bowl sucked. No offense. I thought the Chiefs stunk. I thought the announcing stunk. I thought the commercials stunk. The officiating early, everybody was mad at. I thought it was an incredibly uninteresting, non-entertaining Super Bowl, but congratulations on your team winning.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I get it. If you're not a fan of either team, I totally get that. I think people, for the most part, took enjoyment in watching the Chiefs lose. I thought like the Eagles offensive and defensive line play was incredible. Some of the best I've seen. But aside from that, it wasn't like super compelling unless you were a fan of the Eagles or just like watching the Chiefs get beat. I thought it's pretty clear to me that Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady like don't like each other. I don't know if that's true or not, but they did not. For two guys that called an entire season together, they have no chemistry. And maybe that's all Tom Brady's fault. But I thought Brady was not particularly good. Yeah, it's all Brady's fault. The score bug was weird too on the bottom of the screen, wasn't it? I found that to be distracting. It was a weird package. Weird package from Fox. Yeah.
Congratulations again. Like, what did your house do? What did your house do?
It was pretty low key. I was just here watching with my wife and my son, and he went to bed probably like right after halftime. So I was watching him on the couch by myself for most of the second half. So it was, Yeah, I'm not like a screamer at the TV or anything like that. So
You know what your son did today? Woke up a champion.
he did wear a bird shirt to daycare, and he does live in a world now. He's 2, and the Eagles have played in 2 Super Bowls in his lifetime.
Wow.
I had to wait from 1988 to 2004 to see the Eagles play in a Super Bowl, and he's seen them twice in 3 years. Yeah.
I don't think you can have a guy and I think Tom Brady absolutely sucked, like embarrassingly bad for him and for the network, right?
Mhm.
Because you can't have a guy, Tom Brady, and like the persona, right? Nick Saban's grumpy, Gronk is dumb, and Tom Brady is plastic. Tom Brady is a plastic robot. Everything he does,
quite literally by this point. Yeah.
Everything he does plays into that persona. You're not human. You don't bleed. They had a commercial where he opened his arm and had batteries in him. And then somebody thought, you know what would be great? Let's put a plastic robot on TV and have him talk to America for 4 hours. Because you know what plastic robots are great at? Talking. This is actually, I think, good for the anti-AI movement because Tom Brady is the closest thing we have to human AI, and it blows. So I think we might be able to repel the robot revolution because our most robot-like human is the worst. He's the worst. He's awful. He should be embarrassed. And while he was simultaneously like burnishing his quarterback legacy because Patrick Mahomes kept throwing the ball into the ground, his legacy as a human capable of interesting speech, he absolutely torpedoed himself. And this is why I get mad about this, because we talk about football. I get annoyed when it's just like, just give it to that guy. Talking about football and playing football are not the same thing. And he sucks at talking about football. And then somebody was like, well, he has good insight. It's like, maybe he has it. He doesn't share it.
He doesn't know how to express it. Yeah.
He didn't, like, nobody pressed the insight button. It's like, Kevin, can you press the insight button on Tom's back? It's number 3, insight. And then clearly when the game was out of hand, they were like, you got to talk about what it was like losing Super Bowls because Mahomes is losing a Super Bowl. You've got to talk about what that feels like. There's literally no person on earth who can relate to Patrick Mahomes losing the Super Bowl more than you. The only problem is Tom Brady's not actually a person. So Chris Collinsworth would have been better. Troy Aikman would have been better. Tony Romo would have been better. Greg Olsen, the guy they kicked to the curb for Tom Brady, would have been better. A million different other people who talk about football all the time would have been better. And like, it's like, what are you getting so mad about? Because he's talking at you for how often do you sit and listen to someone talk at you for 4 hours and 15 minutes? It's a super important job. And it should be based on whether you're good at talking, not about whether you're good at playing football. It's not the same thing. Many people can do both. Some people can only do one. I can't play football. Tom Brady can't talk about it. Get him off my TV. He's a plastic robot, not fit for human consumption.
The guy he replaced can do both. Greg Olsen's very good.
He is very good. A couple other things I wanted to compare. Left tackle issues. Notre Dame solved them during the year. Ohio State solved them during the year. Chiefs never solved it, killed them.
Yeah, the Chiefs, I think a lot of not prioritizing the offensive line came home to roost for the Chiefs on Sunday night.
So it's one of those things, like, I felt like we talked about so much Notre Dame and Ohio State and like everybody in the North, like, hey, they're overcoming offensive line injuries. And I almost got to the point, like, oh God, maybe we're talking about, no, like, cause that was the whole, like the Chiefs, like they benched a guy, they got a guy hurt, they kicked a guard out. It never worked. And this is what it would have looked like if Donovan Jackson had not emerged as arguably Ohio State's most valuable player. It's like, oh, what would have happened? That.
Yeah.
If you ever want to know what it looks like, if your left tackle is non-functional, if the guard you kick out of desperation can't actually do it, what's it going to do to your offense? It's going to do that. That was, they were non-functional.
They were. And also, like, I think like the Eagles are like the Ohio State example and the Notre Dame example of that, right? Because even, I guess, like Mekhi Becton had to leave for a few snaps against Chiefs on Sunday, but then like Tyler Steen, who's a 3rd-round pick, and the guy that the Eagles think is eventually going to start, just stepped in and played right guard. And when they played Washington in the NFC Championship game, Cam Jurgens, a starting center, didn't play, so they moved Landon Dickerson from center to guard and then started Tyler Steen at guard, and it was fine. Matters, man. Got to prioritize and develop depth up front, and if you don't,
Yeah.
you're going to lose. It's as simple as that.
The big storyline was the Eagles didn't blitz at all and still got a ton of pressure. And what was the storyline of like Ohio State's defense in the playoff run?
Mm-hmm.
4-man pressure without blitzing much, right? Big deal.
Yeah, huge deal. Yeah, I was crazy. I actually hadn't realized like I thought people were lying or like next gen stats was broken when they were saying the Eagles didn't blitz at all. I guess they ran some simulated pressures, but they never sent more than 4.
Yep.
Never sent more than 4. Yeah.
And then I actually blame the Chiefs. Never should have made it there. They were a fraud the whole year, even though they only had 1 loss. And then they lost the last game when they played their backups. But nobody ever got them. They had these issues all year, and nobody in the AFC could make them pay. So actually, this is on the Ravens and the Bills and the Chargers and the Broncos and the Bengals and everybody else who like played close games with the Chiefs and never got over the top against them. And it's one of those things that I actually kind of like the thing where you split a sport in half, which is what all the pro sports do. You split the sport in half. And it's like, well, and this is the other thing too, when people complain about college football, you're not getting the 2 best teams in the championship game. Pro sports get not the 2 best teams in the championship game by the structure of the sport all the time. Because what if the 2 best teams were the Lions and the Eagles? They literally, they're not allowed to play. So this is how pro sports work. And this is, I thought, was an example of that, of like the AFC like couldn't take these guys down. And the result was we got a lousy Super Bowl. Like this wouldn't happen in college football, Landis, because we wouldn't be divided up. Can you imagine if we really had divided the sport and we're like, oh my God, we had to get one of those stinky SEC teams. We had to get a Southern team. As much as I want the sport to divide North and South, if the championship of college football had to be North versus South, can you imagine how much a Northern team would have beaten a Southern team by? It would have been like this. Notre Dame
Well,
came
I don't
back
know if
and made
that's true. Ohio State played Texas in the semifinal. It didn't look like this.
No, now listen, just follow my thing. I said go along with the thing. You're sick. Go along with the thing where Doug says everything in the South stinks. But this is the thing that like college football gives us. Like we know there are paths, and we got Oregon, Ohio State in a quarter, but they're not dictated by the structure of the sport before the season starts, right? So at times like this, it's nice. At times I like the structure when you're half and you're in. But I thought last night was an example of like why when that fails sometimes. They didn't deserve to be there. And actually, that's almost one of those things. People are using this to like ding the Mahomes resume. They shouldn't have been there. They weren't good enough to be there. And he dragged them there he had a mediocre year. But the only reason they were even there was because of him. And they never should have been there. They're mid. Kansas, like everybody in the SEC, like they're desperate for affirmation. Oh, the Eagles have a bunch of dogs. Dog mentality. Bird mentality and dog mentality are not the same thing. Congratulations on living in the past, everybody in Georgia. The Eagles got there because of Georgia. Okay, great. Cooper DeJean and Zach Bond are from the North. So, like, it's not your team. Great. You had a couple good players. And by the way, congratulations to the Eagles for their wonderful draft pick by picking a guy who slid because he was involved in a car accident that led to the death of a teammate, which is not funny, but it's like, it's not great drafting. It's just you were willing, your moral standards were lower than other teams. So it's like you were able to take that guy there where other people were like, we're not drafting Jalen Carter. So congrats on that. But like, that's all the South has to hang on to. But the South can cram it. Anyway, the Super Bowl, in the end, the South can cram it because the Chiefs are Ole Miss.
Andy Reid is Lane Kiffin.
Andy Reid is Lane Kiffin. I mean, Andy Reid. Andy Reid is Lane Kiffin. Like, what's the difference? They're overrated. They used to be good. They're not good anymore. The Chiefs are the SEC. Except in our sport, we kept the SEC out of the championship game. In that sport, they foisted that mid-team on the entire country for 4.5 hours as narrated by a plastic robot. What a joke. College football is better than the NFL, isn't it?
Well, that's true. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yes. I agree with that.
Oh, I didn't know the Super Bowl was going to make me so mad. Congratulations to your team winning, though, by the way. It's great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
I was so mad. The whole game. I had wings though, so I was happy. Okay.
I was having a great time.
Yeah. Quick break. We'll come back. Ultimate Northern schedule from Ireland to Piscataway. That's how everything's to Piscataway. We just got to decide what the thing is at the front. We'll do that next on KOTN. What happened? Jim Tressel's the lieutenant governor of Ohio now? Did that happen during the break? What's happening?
It happened like right before the show. Yeah.
He's actually the lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio.
He is. Yeah.
Jim Tressel. What's going to happen to his podcast? Ooh, this is good for us. He can't do a football podcast while he's lieutenant governor. We're getting rid of the competition. Oh, that's good. If you watch
the next governor, you know this is leading to him running for governor.
So I did a story. I mean, it was before Jim Tressel left Ohio State. It must have been 16 years ago, where I talked to Tom Osborne about going from college football coach into politics, into government, and like what you have to do and how you do it. And so like this is actually maybe finally happening now, because J.D. Vance is vice president and John Husted, the former lieutenant governor, got appointed to his Senate seat. So now there's a lieutenant governor opening, and DeWine is term limited. So like Mike DeWine, the Ohio governor, there's not even that's over.
The next governor is Jim Tressel.
Jim Tressel is the next governor of Ohio. Like, there's not even a doubt. Is there? Is there a doubt?
I think he'd have a pretty convincing win if he ran.
Is Jim Tressel going to be president?
I don't think he'll be president.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, because he won't get any Michigan votes. No, okay. Oh, I don't know what I think of this.
Also, I want to be the person who decides to run against Jim Tressel.
Yeah, for real.
For governor of Ohio. What's the platform?
This is weird, though, because everybody called him the senator, right, when he was a head coach, but they really, as it turned out, we should have been calling him the lieutenant governor.
That's right.
Who knew? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, he's going to be the governor. Football and politics. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Like, what is that? Do you want to be something? Do you want to be something?
No,
what do you want to be?
No, my wife was elected to office one time. She was actually elected to 2 public offices because she wrote herself in for 2 positions, and she was the only person who got a vote. So she won 2 and then had to choose.
Well, congratulations to her.
One was judge of elections. I forget what the other one was, but she chose judge of elections.
Is she currently that?
No, it was when she lived in Pittsburgh in Allegheny County.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, okay. I'm just I'm befuddled by this. I'm like surprised by this, except it's also the most obvious thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, back to football. Let's figure out. Oh man. I think we have to have a limit on how many former coaches can be in government. Like, we can't have them all. I don't want Lane Kiffin in government. Can we draw the line there?
Buddy, I have bad news for you.
Lane Kiffin can do whatever he wants in the state. Just don't put Lane Kiffin in the federal government.
Did you see Tommy Tuberville lie about recruiting Patrick Mahomes?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Okay. It's just sports. Yeah, I mean, actually, when you're in charge, it's one of those things. When you're a football coach, you're actually in charge of like a multi-million-dollar business that is super important to 1 million people, and you have a lot of people underneath you that you're in charge of. So it actually is probably better training for government than a lot of other professions, frankly. For instance, than podcasting. Okay. Last year we did this. This was our ultimate northern schedule last year. Penn State at West Virginia, Pitt at Cincinnati, Alabama at Wisconsin, Iowa at Minnesota, Louisville at Notre Dame, Michigan at Washington. It was a rematch of the national title game.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State or Oregon, Nebraska at Indiana. I've gone back and looked at some stuff, Landis. You were very, very interested in Indiana football going into last season. Far more than a lot of other people. Like we have stuff of you being like, I think they could win like 9 games. Syracuse at Pitt on a Thursday night, Michigan State at Michigan, Ohio State at Penn State, BYU at Utah, Utah at Colorado, Wisconsin at Nebraska, and Michigan at Ohio State. So that was our ultimate northern schedule. Last year, we wound up going to 5 of those games. Penn State, West Virginia, Pitt, Cincinnati, Alabama, Wisconsin. I went to all those 3 to start. Syracuse at Pitt, you and I went there on Thursday, and then Michigan, Ohio State, you went there to end the season. So this is, we're making this up, but it also is like a little bit of an indication of possibly where we might go. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about all the weeks of the season, the game that we pick, a couple of the other options, and then we'll reveal the schedule at the end. I will tell you, 28 northern teams. We're getting to 25 of our teams, Landis. This ultimate northern schedule includes 25 of our 28 teams, which that matters to us, does it not?
Yeah,
We're
I think so.
comprehensive.
Yeah, we want to be comprehensive. We want to get out and see the North.
And so it's one of those, like, I'm willing to maybe at times like give up a more interesting game in the name of like, well, we got this eyeballs on your team, in the best situation that made them the most interesting, but some of them are tough. So let's start with week 0. Iowa State, Kansas State, and Dublin, Ireland. It's an Aer Lingus game, Saturday, August 23rd. Kansas is the only other northern team that's playing in week 0. They're playing Fresno State. But this is in Ireland, man. Kansas State's given up the home game. It's the 10th Ireland game since they started doing this. It's the 7th North versus North Ireland game. 2 have been North versus South. The only South-South game was Georgia Tech, Florida State last year. That Georgia Tech won, and everybody went nuts because they thought that mattered. And then it turns out Florida State just stinks. The first
Wasn't it
one
fun at the time, though? Wasn't it fun? It was
fun at the time.
Yeah.
The things you think, oh my God, right? The things you think in the moment, and it's like, nope, they just stink.
Yeah.
BC Army was the first one of these in 1988. This is exciting, Landis.
It's one of those games. I remember, like if I recall, a terrible Penn State UCF game.
2014.
George O'Leary was coaching, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that was, stinker.
And then, as you've noted, there's not a 2026 game on the schedule for Ireland at the moment that I can find, but 2027, Wisconsin Pitt, another northern banger.
Shout out to the folks in Dublin and the fine people at Aer Lingus for just stacking northern banger after northern banger in Dublin.
Because you know what Ireland is? The North.
It's the North, yeah.
Ireland's practically the North Pole, honestly, if you think about it.
I don't know about that.
Okay. So this is a great. I'm a little surprised they're doing this. K-State's given up the home game for this, but it seems like when the idea came up, everybody was all in. So awesome, but to have a Northwestern Nebraska played a conference game in 2022 there. Obviously, it was an ACC game last year, so it's a little interesting to give up a rivalry game that is typically the last week of the regular season and open the season in a foreign country. But I know the people in Ireland said one of the things that got their attention was Iowa State fans traveling to a bowl game in Texas, and they were like, these people travel. So yes. I think Kansas State and Iowa State fans are going to make plans to show up in force in Ireland.
I think they will too. I think it stands a very good chance to be the best game we've seen over there. At least from a meaningful standpoint, what it will mean to the Big 12 race, but also in sick environment with these two fan bases showing up. I'd imagine being out there enjoying themselves, being pretty rowdy for a game like that. How do you feel generally about taking college football out into the world? I know the NFL's doing it. There was a Brazil game. I think there's a Germany game this year. They're trying to play in Mexico City, I believe. Do you like taking college football on the road, or would you rather be played in the States?
College, if it's good for the fans. So if this is a once in a lifetime experience, if it's yanking something away from the fans in the name of making more money for TV networks, then no. But if this is you can sell this, you would now Iowa State and Kansas State fans could make plans for this. They could get flights. They can go have a once in a lifetime experience to do this. I'm okay with it. Dropping whatever. I mean, BYU played in Japan one time. Didn't Ty Detmer accept the Heisman in Japan or something? I can't remember. I can't.
Sounds awesome though.
In
the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, Wisconsin played in Japan, I think. There's some stuff that it's this makes no sense. If there's no fans of the teams that are there because it's clearly not for the fans, then I'm out. If it's a unique, special experience where the people who love that team can go see their team play in a unique environment, then I'm in. But I don't want to do it too much.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I believe the NFL is going to play a game in Australia this year, which is just that's too far. There's not going to, whatever two fan bases end up having, they're not going to go. No. And then it's well, what's the point? So.
That's over the big ocean. Going over the small
ocean.
Is big of a deal.
A lot of ocean.
Yeah, that's a lot of ocean. Yeah. All right, so that's the week 0 game. We're going to open with the banger. We could be there. Maybe.
Perhaps.
Maybe. Week 1. What do you got for week 1? And now listen, the thing we did is we cheated 2 weekends. I cheated. But mostly it's we picked one game a day. But if these weekends where it's there's a Thursday game, Friday game, whatever, then we can go to more than one game in a week.
We can, and week 1 is good for that because I believe we start on Thursday, we go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're not doing a Friday game. There wasn't really one that really the pop. But we are going to start it with a Thursday. It is Nebraska versus Cincinnati at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. This game was supposed to be played in Indianapolis, and it got moved to Kansas City. I'm assuming so Dylan Raiola can complete his Pokemon evolution in the Patrick Mahomes. But whatever.
They might have to move it again after that Mahomes game. They might move it out.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty fired up for this game to be played in Indianapolis, which I guess is it's far closer to Cincinnati than it is to Nebraska. I suppose this is more in the middle of the two places. But Lucas Oil Stadium is a cool place to see a game. So
I will interrupt you briefly. They scheduled this series in 2013. They played at Nebraska in 2020. So this is the Cincinnati home game part of it. So that's why it was in Indy, right?
Okay.
But Cincinnati still has 7 home games this year.
They do.
So they're not like, it's sort of taking a Cincinnati home game and moving it to Kansas City, but they're okay. Their fans are still going to be able to see the Bearcats play nearby. So I think it's a little bit of a Cincinnati's given something up, but it's still okay.
I would have just preferred this game to be played in Nippert, because Nippert, I think, is actually a very underrated place to watch a college football game, especially a big game if they can put it at night, which this would be on a Thursday evening. But I guess I'll digress there. I think this stands to be like a pretty interesting game. Matt Rule expectations, Dylan Raiola expectations, Cincinnati, like, reloading, I think, to at least be like a formidable opponent for Nebraska early in the season. So I'm pretty excited for that one. And then moving through the rest of the weekend on Saturday, just an absolutely massive game. Texas at Ohio State.
Yeah.
In the shoe. I'm assuming this will be big noon on Fox. I would stake a pretty penny on Fox.
Gus
Fox
is there.
This one. Yeah, Gus
is in the shoe already.
He's there, ready to call the game. I actually didn't think, like, for week one where everybody is playing, I was expecting like to have some tough decisions to make throughout this week, and that didn't really end up being the case. It was pretty clear cut that, like, Nebraska Cincinnati on Thursday, Texas Ohio State rematch of the semifinals on a Saturday. You get Arch Manning presumably against Julian saying, like, here we go, those two guys starting their careers in earnest in the biggest game of the early college football season. I don't know what more you could ask for there in that game. So obviously I don't know what you're planning on doing, but I'm going to be at that game.
1-2.
I can tell you.
Do we think it's 1? Do we think it's 1-2 preseason?
Yeah, probably. I think Texas, Ohio State, Georgia are 1, 2, 3 in some order. So I
God forbid Georgia not be in the top 3. Oh,
right, they must.
Oh, we got to put Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah. So I would imagine this is 1-2, probably with Texas being 1 and Ohio State being 2 as the defending national champs. It's going to be awesome. You covered Texas's last trip to the shoe. Is that right?
I did. Yeah, I covered. Yeah. That was the first game I ever covered. Covering Ohio State was Texas at Ohio State in 2005. That was the first time they ever played. Then they played in 2006 in Austin. They played in 2009 in the Fiesta Bowl, and they played last year. So this will be the 5th time they played. The one thing about this is going to be so interesting is, like, okay, it'll be Texas is playing Ohio State in back-to-back games. That was the last game of last year for Texas and the first game of this year. But 19 guys from Texas declared early for the draft. And you and I did a ranking on our local Columbus show of the best Ohio State players of this season. And only 3 of the top 15 are back. So these are the same programs. They are not going to be the same teams.
No, and Ohio State's coaching staff is changing pretty drastically too. So two very different teams. It's a good point, but still, I think 2 teams that everyone's expecting to just reload and make another run at a deep playoff run. So it'll be great. I hope, like, I don't mean to spoil everyone's party by saying it's going to be big noon, but I think we can understand how this works. I hope it's at night. I'm just, it's not. It's not going to be. So it's going to be the noon game on Fox, and then on Sunday. I was a little unclear as to what our appetite would be to actually leave the North to go to some of these games. But on Sunday, pack your bags for South Florida.
Yeah.
Notre Dame at Miami.
Yeah.
Sunday night in a window by itself. I like that college football owns this weekend. I like that they have a Sunday night game and a Monday night game that has its own audience. And this one will be a banger. Notre Dame, coming off of an appearance in a national title game, Miami selling false hope to its fan base with Carson Beck at quarterback. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And I can't wait for Notre Dame to go down there and dash those hopes in week 1.
Pelican mentality. What's their thing? It's a pelican, right? I know it's a hurricane, but you can't
It's an
represent
ibis.
a weather. It's an ibis. What's an ibis?
It's a bird.
Is it a pelican? Is an ibis another? Is it the Greek word name?
It's
for
a long-legged wading bird.
Oh,
that inhabits wetlands.
ibis mentality. What can I say? Let's have ibis mentality for this game. Notre Dame and Miami played 19 of 20 years between 1971 and 1990. Right, Catholics versus convicts. Everybody loved it. Yeah. Still wear T-shirts for it. This will be the fifth time they've played in the last 35 years. So this is one of the like Miami Notre Dame. Like this is getting back to roots. Right? Like Texas, Ohio State is cool, but there's really not any history here. There's history here.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this. Yeah. So we've got it. Like, you're going.
I would like to go. Yeah. I would like to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I already followed Notre Dame to Florida once, so you're going this time. Great one.
It'll be a heck of a turnaround, though. I got to be in Columbus on Saturday at noon and then South Florida Sunday night. It's gonna be
you can drive. Yeah. Just leave straight from the shoe. You'll be fine. Let's do week 2. I'm very apprehensive about this. I picked Boston College, Michigan State, because the thing I think is that when we have non-conference games between two of our teams, we've got to celebrate that. So Michigan State played at BC last year. This is like week 2 last year. I went to Pitt, Cincinnati to celebrate that kind of thing. This is our game, right? This is a KOTN game. Here's the problem. Michigan at Oklahoma is also this week. Michigan and Oklahoma have played once, ever. January 1st, 1976 in the Orange Bowl. Michigan is first all-time in wins, and Oklahoma is 6th. Except Oklahoma kind of stinks. If Oklahoma hadn't fallen off a cliff, like I think this would be a no-brainer. We've got to do Michigan, Oklahoma. Here's the other problem. Kansas at Missouri, we're reviving a dead rivalry. They haven't played since 2011. In 2020, they agreed to 4 games and this year and 26, and then 31 and 32. Kansas, Missouri is special. I'll read from the Wikipedia entry because that's the kind of professional journalist I am. Yep. The rivalry has historic roots in the often violent relationship between the states of Kansas and Missouri, including guerrilla warfare between the states before and during the American Civil War. So I think about those games and I'm like, nope, we're going to watch Nick Marsh and Jaden Skeet. Like it's not. I want to get eyeballs on the Aiden Childs, Nick Marsh connection for Michigan State early on. BC is completely turning over its offensive and defensive lines. They had like a first-round pick at defensive end. They have two draft picks on the offensive line they're losing. Complete reshuffle. But Turbo Richard back at running back. Jaden Skeet and Lewis Bond back at receiver. Is it going to be Grayson James? Could Dylan Lonergan, the Alabama transfer, compete for that job? Like I want to get eyeballs on this game in East Lansing, Landis. But this is a tough week to skip. Like, what should we do? I don't know. This is what I picked. Did I pick wrong?
Isn't Iowa State this week too?
Iowa State. It's like Cy-Hawk is just sitting there. Like we'll get to Cy-Hawk at some point, but we're also going to Ireland to watch Iowa State. So like we don't have to go to Cy-Hawk in week 2. Can I give you another one that's this week? UConn at Syracuse is this week. Out of 134 teams last year, this actually surprised me. Do you know how many in major college football won at least 9 games last year out of 134? Bowl games included.
68.
Oh, 41. Actually, 41 seemed high to me. I thought it might be like 23. 41. UConn was 9-4. Syracuse was 10-3. They're playing each other in week 2. That's actually a pretty interesting game. And you know what's another interesting game? Kansas State's coming back from Ireland, and then 2 weeks later, they got to deal with Army. So, like, I'm going to be on a lookout for, like, Kansas State to win in Ireland and, like, jumpstart its season and then get just absolutely T-boned by Army. So, anyway, is this stupid to skip Michigan, Oklahoma, or Kansas, Missouri to go to Boston College, Michigan State?
Oh, maybe. It's well intentioned. It is true to the show. It wasn't a particularly compelling game last year. I don't know that it's going to be one this year, and some of those other games that are happening this week fit more into the banger category than I think this one would.
But it is one of those for us, and so like it'll be a great weekend. This is a great weekend for Northern Ball for you guys sitting on your couches. Like, of course, watch Michigan, Oklahoma. Of course, watch Kansas, Missouri, and also watch Boston College, Michigan State. But this is like defining for us. Like nobody is going to care about Boston College, Michigan State like Kings of the North.
That's
So
right.
that's part of it for me.
Yeah.
Like, I want to own games like this and these two fan bases. And I think it's really cool they're playing. So anyway, I'm super conflicted. What are we going to do in week 3?
We're going to West Virginia for the backyard brawl.
To the brawl.
Rich Rodriguez's first backyard brawl since 2007. Like 13-9.
That's why I got them right here.
13-9, which I get like Pitt fans still shout at West Virginia fans to this day, right? Like
when I went and talked to Pitt and West Virginia fans about this, that I was like, that's just what, like, Pitt fans, that's all they said. They're like 13-9.
Yeah. So that game was at West Virginia. This game will be at West Virginia. It'll be a pretty awesome environment, I think, to get Rich Rod back into this rivalry. He was 4-3, I think, in the backyard brawl in his entire time at West Virginia, but his last one was a loss and the most memorable win probably that Pitt has had in that rivalry. So it's going to be awesome. I know that Pat Narduzzi is going to be lighting up the microphones in the week leading up to the game. I don't know enough actually about Rich Rod to know if he'll respond in kind, but I don't think that he needs to, because the fan bases will do plenty of talking for the both of them. It's going to be great. I didn't go to this game last year. Did you go? Did you go out in Pittsburgh?
No, because I went to Wisconsin, Alabama in week 3 because I had just gone to Pitt, Cincinnati the week before. We're going to the brawl.
Yeah,
we both going
to the brawl. We need to go to the brawl. Yeah, it's not the only. So that week there's also A&M at Notre Dame, return trip there. There's Wisconsin at Alabama, the return trip there. Oregon is coming to Northwestern. If you care, it's North on North, and then Utah plays Wyoming.
I just think it's weird because the undefeated number 1 team all of last year is playing in a lakeside stadium with like 8,000 people in it. Yeah, I think it's weird.
No, that is weird. That is weird. Yeah, I'd imagine Oregon handles its business quite easily there, but it is weird. A&M, Notre Dame, and Wisconsin, Alabama are compelling, but they don't hold a candle to the brawl, to this version of the brawl.
So as you said, Pitt was a 28-point underdog, 2007. Probably if West Virginia wins that game, they're number 2 in the rankings. Then they would have gone in the national championship game, and then like Rich Rod can't take the Michigan job because Michigan's probably not waiting, and he's not going to leave as they're ready to play a national championship game. So it like changed the face of West Virginia football for Pitt to win that game, and it changed Rich Rod's life. And I didn't know this. The people who know the brawl like the back of their hand, the 13-9ers, you know who missed field goals of 20 and 32 yards in that 13-9 game?
Pat McAfee.
Pat McAfee for West Virginia. He got a show anyway. I don't know, man. He's no robot, at least. He's not a robot. We know that.
No, he shouts a lot, yeah.
So anyway, all right, we're going to the brawl. We're going to the brawl. Also, I'm not, after Wisconsin, Alabama last year, I'm not going to Wisconsin, Alabama, and Tuscaloosa. No offense.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's got to show me something.
That's fair. I'm with you.
Felt like wasted trip last year. Week 4. Originally, we had Michigan, Nebraska for this because I kind of want to. Like that's a banger, but this is a torch passing. Illinois at Indiana. If Illinois is going to be the Indiana of this year, let's see it now, and let's see how good Indiana is going to be. So. Indiana opens the season, Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. We're going to have no idea about Indiana coming into this game. Illinois opens Western Illinois at Duke, Western Michigan. We're not going to have that much of an idea. And I think this game is going to give us a real idea about a playoff team from last year and a possible playoff team from this year. So I think this is an important one for us to have our eye on.
I think so too. There were a couple other Indiana games that I was looking at, but I'll be honest, I'm a little uncertain of what Indiana is going to be, and I didn't want to say like let's definitely put this one on the schedule, and then we get to that game and it's like, well, Indiana has 4 wins. So, this I like. This is like an information gathering trip to figure out exactly what these two teams are. I think Illinois, like you, is going to be very good. I'm not entirely sure what to make of Indiana, but I do think Indiana will be at least positioned to give Illinois a very good early test, especially in Bloomington. So this is like, I don't know how many people will be talking about this game going into the 2025 college football season, but this is like a very sneaky, interesting game to me.
So my biggest issue with our schedule is we're only seeing Michigan one time that we have down here. And I would love to get early eyes on Michigan, but we're turning down Michigan at Oklahoma, and we're turning down Michigan at Nebraska in the first month. And I feel terrible about that.
I don't want to get eyes on Michigan until Bryce Underwood's playing quarterback, which I don't think will be early in the season. I don't think that happens until mid-year.
Syracuse at Clemson also this week. That could matter. And then the two West Coast rivalry games, Oregon State, Oregon, Washington, Washington State, also this week. Keep eyeballs on that. But I think this is the right call. Illinois, Indiana is the right call here?
Yeah.
All right. What are we doing week 5?
Week 5 was no doubt about it. Clear cut. Oregon at Penn State. Rematch of the Big Ten title game. I'd imagine this is a top 5 matchup. Where do you think Penn State's going to be preseason? 4?
Probably 4.
Like, I think they should be ahead of Georgia. Like, I think the top 3 teams going into the year should be Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State in some order, but I don't think that'll actually be the case. So I think Penn State's probably 4, and I could very much see Oregon being like 5, maybe 6. So this is like at worst, borderline top 5 game in Happy Valley. I do wonder, because it's a West Coast team coming to play in Beaver Stadium, if this could potentially be a night game. Maybe. Well,
it's one of those things. They're going to have their draft, right? And like NBC is going to want a good night game on some of these weeks, and CBS is going to want good stuff in the 3:30 window. So like, not every good Big Ten game is going to be at noon.
And NBC, so this could NBC got Ohio State, Oregon last year. So maybe this could be I understand the frustrations of like Penn State and Ohio State fans, especially, of like not getting like really any home marquee night games anymore. I think Penn State actually stands a pretty good chance of getting one here, and it's going to be awesome. Two national title contenders going at it fairly early on in the season. So like it's not one that upends either team's season, but I think a win for either of these teams will be propulsive on their way to trying to win the conference and get a playoff bye and all that stuff. But it's just like a measuring stick game to see exactly how good two of these teams are going to be.
So we've got to say that Ohio State's the best program in the Big Ten right now. They're the national champs, and also they have a depth to their program. Who's the number 2 team in the Big Ten? Number 2 program in the Big Ten. Number 2, not like preseason rankings. Who's the number 2 program in the Big Ten?
I think it's Oregon.
Okay. Not if Penn State beats them in this one. This is a big year for Oregon. Like, we got to get eyeballs on Oregon too. I'm super interested in Oregon this year. All right, week 6. We're doing 2 in week 6. 1 we're doing just because it's a Friday night. West Virginia at BYU, Friday, October 3rd. BYU only plays 6 home games this year. They play at East Carolina. Can you imagine, like, BYU, a Big 12 team, is playing at East Carolina because it's a remnant of like a series they signed before they joined the Big 12. So this is like, we talked about this, how like Colorado hadn't played like 7 home games, and it's a big deal. Like, this is still like some of these teams like this, like BYU, they're new to this still. Like, this is, anyway, West Virginia at BYU is a big deal because like BYU only gets 6 home games this year. So we'll go see it. Plus, like, BYU is going to be top 10 in the preseason. So let's get like top 15 at the worst, maybe top 10 with what they have back. So let's get early eyeballs on BYU. You good for early eyeballs on BYU?
Absolutely. And I want to go to Provo, so let's do it.
You do? Okay, so that's good. I have a trivia question for you. Do you want a trivia question?
Please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I'm counting them out. How many games in the 2025 season, regular season, will be between 2024 playoff teams?
6.
9.
Oh,
and none are the same weekend.
Counting.
I know. Last I have tricked you. 9, which actually is kind of a lot. It's kind of cool. Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Oregon, SMU, Clemson, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, and Texas, Georgia. And then the one that we're also going to go see this week on Saturday, Boise State at Notre Dame. And I thought we had to pick this because it is so deliciously weird. And they only announced this game last summer. They announced this game in June of 2024, and they're like, let's go play. So this is 2 playoff teams playing in Notre Dame Stadium. This is awesome. No Ashton Genty. Does Sire Gaines do anything for you? You ever heard of Sire Gaines?
Nope.
Was a freshman at Boise last year. They flipped him from Arizona State late. Was a pretty good recruit out of California. 12 carries for 110 yards in the opener against Georgia Southern, then got hurt in week 3. I think he's going to be the running back for Boise State. So we got to go see this. Boise, Notre Dame. What a crazy, weird, awesome game. So like the other games this week, Minnesota at Ohio State. is actually pretty interesting. Boston College at Pitt, Syracuse at SMU, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Wisconsin, Michigan. But I thought this was clearly the one to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when they scheduled it last year, we talked about it a little bit, just like kind of a random, but very exciting and interesting matchup. I guess like some of the shines off of it, right? Because Ashton Genty's not there, but I still expect Boise State to be good and in the Mountain West race and thus in the playoff race. So an opportunity for them to swing up and an opportunity for Notre Dame to welcome a random kind of cool opponent to Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. All right, week 7. What are we doing in week 7? So that's 2 games in week 6, just because we have that Friday night game.
Yeah, just 1 game in week 7, but the potential to be incredibly interesting. It's Ohio State at Illinois. Ohio State has not played in Champaign since 2015, so this will be 10 years later. Ohio State's finally. It's weird. There's some weird stuff between the old Big Ten East and Big Ten West teams. They just have not played as often as you might realize. So there's some long gaps there between visits. So Ohio State goes back to Champaign for the first time since 2015. I remember they won that game there. It was like kind of weird and sluggish and windy as games can be in Champaign, but this one could be something different than that. This will be Illinois, I would think, ranked, right? We've talked about Illinois' schedule, that there's kind of you can convince yourself pretty easily that Illinois can win 10 games next year. This is one of the ones that's obviously less easy to convince yourself, but it's a chance, not unlike what Indiana had last year when it played Ohio State and Michigan, to in the midst of a special season notch the kind of win that the program just doesn't get. And I'm not saying on February 10th and I'm predicting Illinois to win that game, but I think it will be thought of and talked about very similarly to the Indiana Ohio State game in 2024.
Yeah, which turned out sort of to be not that interesting and not mattering.
Sure.
So like it's hard because it's like, oh, this will be such a test for Illinois to find out where they are. Like, oh, Ohio State, like where, but actually it might be like a 21-point win and they both make the playoff anyway. So this is one of those where, I mean, obviously, like where I'm all for the 12-team playoff, but it's like this is the exact kind of game where it's like we could get fired up for this, and I think it's the obvious choice in week 7, and it also might not matter at all.
Yeah, that's fair, and it could be the case, but it's not there's not another game that's like really pushing for it. Like Iowa Wisconsin is a rivalry game that's happening that weekend. Iowa State at Colorado could be important for the Big 12 races as we get into October. Clemson at Boston College, Indiana at Oregon, Rutgers at Washington are the other ones that jumped out to me, and there's some interesting or potentially interesting games in there, but I think Ohio State Illinois is the right choice.
I think it is the right choice too. Getting Dabo north, whenever Dabo comes north, he came to Pitt last year and Pitt gave him a heck of a game, right? Dabo in the cold, not that it's going to be super cold in October 11th, but like is always intriguing to me. But I think this is the right call because if I was picking my bracket tomorrow, I'd probably pick both these teams to make the playoff.
Yes. I think a lot of people would.
So let's watch them play.
Yeah.
Illinois has beaten Ohio State once in the last 23 years. Ohio State's won 12 of the last 13, only win by Illinois in Ohio Stadium in 2007. All right. Take a little break, reset ourselves, come back with week 8 and the rest of the ultimate Northern schedule next on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis back on Kings of the North. Thanks for being here. We're doing it twice a week here in the off season. Unless something really pops and we need to come in and chat with you more than that. Monday, Wednesday this week. Give us a like, tell a friend, subscribe, drop a review if you're listening on a podcast. We appreciate you guys being here and always want your feedback. Week 8, Holy War. I really want to go. I almost went last year and didn't, and then it was like, oh my God. Saturday, October 18th, Utah at BYU. Other contenders this week, USC at Notre Dame, Nebraska, Minnesota, Pitt at Syracuse. Again, like our northern teams in the ACC plus Notre Dame are really playing each other a lot this year. But this is it. Last year was 22-21. Jake Retzlaff led that crazy drive at the end. BYU got the ball at their own 9 with one timeout, 1:55 left on the clock. Down 2, got sacked. Jake Retzlaff sacked on the goal line on 4th and 10, and it was like, that's it. Utah's going to upset undefeated BYU. But wait, holding call on Utah in the secondary, which I actually thought was right. Like if you went and got the right angle, like the BYU receivers trying to make an outcut, and the Utah DB got a little handsy, I thought. So I thought that was the right call. Will Farron, 44-yard field goal to win it with 3 seconds left for BYU in a 22-21 win. Utah had won 9 straight in this series before BYU won the last 2. Landis, we got to go.
Well, we didn't go last year, or you didn't go last year because the season had already started to unravel by that point for Utah, right? I'm not anticipating that being the case here. I think this will be maybe a game between 2 ranked teams, but at the very least, I think a game that will matter for both teams in terms of the Big 12 race. So it'll be far more compelling.
Okay, I feel good about that.
We'll be there.
We'll be there. And then guess what? Another Big 12 rivalry game in Week 9.
Yeah, there's actually a few rivalries in Week 9. We're going to go Kansas State, Kansas here, the Sunflower Showdown. We talked about it last week. Kansas State has won the last 15 in this meeting, but Lance Leipold thinks that Kansas is close. This one will be at Kansas, back on campus for Kansas, playing in its renovated stadium. So that should be awesome. I think these are going to be 2 very good Big 12 teams this year. Exciting quarterback matchup with Jalen Daniels and Avery Johnson. But I don't know that this was an easy choice necessarily, because you also have Colorado at Utah. The Rumble and the Rockies is this week. You have Minnesota at Iowa for the Floyd of Rosedale.
Iowa State
this week. Excuse me. No, BYU is Iowa
BYU
State.
At Iowa. Yeah. No, BYU at you said BYU at Iowa. Sorry. BYU at Iowa State.
Minnesota at Iowa. And then Michigan at Michigan State is also that week. So there's some spicy matchups there, but
it is spicy.
Yeah, Kansas, and we wanted this game to be moved to a different week, or a more stable location in the college football calendar. But now it's on a day where there are a lot of other rivalries being played.
Yeah, I saw John Wilner, who's great for former Pac-12 teams and West Coast stuff, but talking about I think he liked what the Big 12 is doing here. You had kind of said that maybe it's you know what? Why put our rivalry games at the end when they get dwarfed by the more traditional games? And here we are. We're in the middle of October, and we're saying that the back-to-back weeks, the best games are huge Big 12 rivalries. So I concede. I was wrong. This feels like a very good plan by the Big 12, because they have a chance to own these 2 weeks with how much these games matter between good teams that hate each other.
I don't know. Is this the third? Is this Tennessee Alabama Day, October 25th?
I can't remember if it's the third weekend, whatever the name of that thing is. I don't know. They're in the South. I don't care about them.
Fair
but
point.
Maybe.
No, that's the weekend before. That's the 18th.
Okay.
So that's the same weekend as the Holy War. There might be SEC games of some note, I guess, happening. But the Big 12, Week 9 is about the Big 12, I think, with Kansas State, Kansas, Colorado, Utah, BYU, Iowa State.
Love it.
Should be fun. But yeah, Kansas State, Kansas is the one that made the cut here.
Chris Tennant, 51-yard field goal for Kansas State with 1:42 left last year to put the Wildcats ahead. Jalen Daniels flushed out of the pocket on 4th and 7, trying to lead the comeback drive, got tackled short. Last 3 games, Kansas is getting closer. Last 3 scores in this game: 49-27, 31-27, 29-27. So I'm putting 27 down for Kansas for my score, and just trying to figure out what Kansas State's going to score. So this is going to be good. All right, week 10. We're going to see that grumpy old fart on Halloween. Yeah, North Carolina at Syracuse, Friday night, October 31st. I am already. I don't care enough about the Patriots to hate the Patriots, but I am screaming about the Patriots a lot because Tom Brady's a robot and Bill Belichick is unnecessarily grumpy. And now he and his girlfriend were in a Dunkings commercial. It's I get it. But also, he's just, I think they're going to blow, and I'm going to love it because college football is going to fall in love with it. It's going to be nauseating. I'm pre-nauseous on this already. ESPN is going to be so up North Carolina's butt all year, and they play nobody. They don't play Louisville. They don't play SMU. They don't play Miami. They play Clemson, and this Syracuse game might be their second toughest game. So their over-under win total, which got posted 4 seconds after Bill Belichick took the job, is 7.5, and they might hit the over just because the ACC stinks and they don't play most of the good teams. I hope Fran Brown blows Bill Belichick's sleeves off. Like, it is, I want to be there. God, I hate this whole storyline. Just retire. Just retire.
I don't like that the ACC. Yeah, I hate it. Yeah, I hate it. But I also don't like that the ACC is making me root for Dabo on October 4th when Clemson plays UNC. Don't ever put somebody in position to root for Dabo.
Did they have like a meeting? They were like, listen, Dabo's the face of the league. Everybody kind of thinks he's a weasel. What could we do to get people to like him?
We got to get his approval rating up.
What if we got Bill Belichick in the league so he could be the most annoying guy? All right. I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go. And I made 2 games on Saturday. I cheated because I think we actually might be split. Penn State, Ohio State, Saturday, November 1st is like, it's the Knowles revenge. It might be 2 versus 3 or 1 versus 4 or whatever. This is a huge game regardless. It's the defending national champ Ohio State Buckeyes against a team in the Penn State Nittany Lions that some people are picking to win the national title this year. And then you add in the fact that the defensive coordinator from one team went to the other. Mm-hmm. Plus they're already rivals. Like, this is, could you argue that Penn State, Ohio State's, I guess, is it Ohio State, Texas? What's the biggest game of the college football regular season?
Ooh, that's really good. I would say probably Ohio State, Texas, just because it's the stakes are whatever similar, I guess, in this one, and it's a little different. Like we see Penn State, Ohio State every year. Although this is also, isn't this like the last time we're going to see Penn State, Ohio State for a few years in the regular season?
But definitely, I know they're not playing in 26. Yeah. So like this is one of those, like, it wasn't designated a rivalry by the Big Ten because Penn State is unrivaled, and I don't think they want to play Ohio State every year, and Ohio State plays Michigan every year. I don't know that Ohio State wants to play Penn State every year. So yeah, like, we have to appreciate this while we have it. It's a banger. It's one of the 3 best games of the regular season because the SEC sucks and they can cram it. None of their games are good. Georgia and Texas are playing each other, but this is better than Georgia, Texas.
Yes, I think so.
I think it might be the second best game of the regular season. If you want to argue Ohio State, Texas, just because it's a little different, but otherwise, like, in terms of how good the teams are and how far they might go in the postseason, this is one of the 2 best games.
Yeah, it could be 1 versus 2 if Ohio State beats Texas. If Ohio State beats Texas, this will be 1 versus 2. Yeah.
So you're going to be here, but I think I might be at Notre Dame, Boston College, because I might drive to Syracuse and keep going. So this is why I put 2 games on this Saturday, because this is more of a road trip thing. I just am, like, for obvious reasons, 2 Catholic universities, Boston College, Notre Dame, they have a history. They played 13 straight years from 92 to 04. They've played 11 of 18 years since then. This will be their first game. I mean, they didn't play in 23 and 24. They did play in 2022, but the last game at BC was in 2020, and the last game with the full crowd in this rivalry at BC was 2017. And Boston College hasn't beaten Notre Dame since 2008. So because where I live, where I'm driving to watch Bill Belichick get destroyed by Fran Brown, I may as well keep going. So I put 2 games here, even though obviously Ohio State, Penn State's the game of the weekend.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame, Boston College is interesting, and if it wasn't up against Penn State, Ohio State, I'd be interested in going to that too. So, we can split up and knock out both.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Week 11. What are we doing? I shoved you off the game you originally put here.
I can't even remember what game I originally put there.
Indiana, Penn State.
Oh yeah, that's fair because I wasn't sold on that either. That was like, I don't know if Indiana's going to actually be good, and my lean is that while they might be still okay, that game won't actually have a ton of stakes to it. So maybe that's not worth having there. We went with Maryland Rutgers, which I think we also maybe had last year. It was very least we talked about.
We talked about it because we were going to name the Railroad Spike game like the King of the North Railroad Spike game, and then we didn't put it on the list.
Yeah, the I-95 Bowl, the Amtrak Bowl, the Wawa
Yeah.
Bowl. We got to, whatever we're gonna call it. It's a regional rivalry, man. It's Maryland versus Rutgers, and I don't know if any of these teams are going to be very good. Rutgers are certainly going to take a step back with all the guys they're losing, and I kind of think like Mike Loxley is on his last legs, but that can create a very compelling atmosphere and some anxiety perhaps when Maryland and Rutgers play in Piscataway on November 8th. And honestly, there's like not a whole lot else on the northern schedule that is like huge. Indiana, Penn State, Syracuse is going to Miami for the return trip there. Well, I guess it's not a return trip; it's a conference game. But Miami lost to Syracuse last year to end the regular season. Oregon at Iowa, potentially interesting. Colorado at West Virginia, potentially important for the Big 12 race. BYU at Texas Tech, especially. I think Texas Tech is probably are they co-favorites right now in the Big 12 with Kansas State, and BYU I think is right there too. So that could be a monumental game for that conference race, but it's in Texas, so who cares? Maryland at Rutgers is our pick on that Saturday. I'm assuming it'll be Saturday at noon, and it'll be sleepy and wonderful, and I can't wait for it. Yeah.
Our game again. Like we have to encourage these programs to hate each other. Yeah. Like this is good for the Big Ten. This is good for Northern football. If we can craft this because a highway connects your towns, like you can take a train.
You can take the train.
Like really. If Aer Lingus can sponsor the Ireland game, Amtrak can sponsor the Rutgers Maryland game. Yeah. So let's call Amtrak. We'll call Amtrak. But like this was one of those. This got us because initially, and we have 3 teams left that didn't make the ultimate Northern schedule. Initially, there were 5 because neither Maryland nor Rutgers made it. And it's like we can do this game, and still it's like, well, it's one fewer Penn State game, right? And we're hitting Indiana somewhere else. So this was a nod. Syracuse Miami is going to be a banger. Syracuse ruined Miami's life last year.
Yeah.
But we're also like not going to Miami twice in the same year to cover Northern football. So we're already going. You're already going for Notre Dame.
And the national title game.
That's true. So we're not picking. That's not a great stadium for the national championship game. Compared to the Atlanta place, it is. It feels like the national championship game in 1987.
Did you, by the way, not to go off on a tangent, I came away from this football season thinking that the national championship maybe should always be played in Atlanta for college football, and that perhaps Super Bowl should always be played in New Orleans.
Oh. Yeah, no, I definitely saw people talk like the New Orleans is like the cultural home like of the Super Bowl. Like it just is like it's the place that feels the most Super Bowl-y.
Yeah.
And it is like for convenience and like atmosphere, like everybody's downtown together and like I think gathering and stuff. Like I could buy it.
Yeah.
Atlanta's. Anyway. I also now I mean it's like I know people are mad about like if the Cleveland Browns are going to build a dome. If you can build an Atlanta dome in Ohio, where American football was birthed. I know they played Rutgers and Princeton, hit each other in the head with a rugby ball in 1843, and that's where football actually started. But like so much of football, by the way, it's a northern sport. Build the Atlanta Dome somewhere in the north. Minnesota has a nice place too. But yeah, that Atlanta stadium is bonkers.
It is. It's pretty great.
Let's play Maryland Rutgers in Atlanta. Why not?
You can take the train there.
So anyway, Syracuse, Miami, put it on your TV this week, but we're gonna think about Maryland Rutgers week 12. I really wanted to get Minnesota on here. I haven't. I felt them this year, and I'm feeling them again. And we've got to get out to Oregon. Like we've got to make Autzen a regular stop on our big northern schedules. And so this is a great chance, I think, to hit really 2 important northern programs, to get out to Oregon in their place and also get eyeballs on Minnesota. Now, Michigan Northwestern in Wrigley this week. Fun, weird, crazy. Notre Dame at Pitt. And honestly, originally this week I had Texas, Georgia, because I thought it was a little bit of an underwhelming northern schedule. And I was like, you and I are going to Georgia. We're going to Athens, invading enemy territory, bringing warhammers, and telling everybody in the South to cram it because it is Texas, Georgia. But then I was like, no, I need eyeballs on the Gophers. I really would like to get eyeballs in person on the Gophers for real myself this season. So this is like a weird one, right? This is like realignment weirdness. Minnesota at Oregon, but also cool. Saturday, November 15th, week 12. That's our game.
PJ Fleck, Dan Lanning, a lot of head coach juice there.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and Minnesota played Penn State late in the year. Granted, it was at home, but they gave Penn State everything they could handle. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to give Oregon a potentially close game here either. I like the pick. I don't like Michigan, Northwestern, and Wrigley will be cool. Notre Dame, Pitt at Pitt could be very cool. I have no interest in going to an SEC game because they can cram it. So this is the right pick, I think.
Minnesota does play an interesting schedule. They're at Ohio State on October 4th, Nebraska October 18th, at Iowa October 25th, plus this Oregon game. Their non-conference is Cal, so it's like we couldn't do this whole schedule and not have the Gophers in here. It's like when are we going to get the Gophers? And this one made the most sense. So anyway, and I just do think, like, of course, Oregon's going to be right in the middle of the playoff mix, if not guaranteed a playoff spot by this point in week 12. But I think Minnesota, as you said, is the kind of team that can, like, give an opponent getting ready for the playoff a problem. So yeah. I really think Drake Lindsay at quarterback might be something this year. They have a decent number of guys back. So I'm excited to be able to make this happen. And I don't like this. Do you know who Oregon's non-conference game is this year?
No, I don't.
Oklahoma State.
Oh,
like,
weird.
I understand making that maybe cool when you made it, except they've driven their program off a cliff. They stink.
Alabama's not still there, is he?
I think he's petitioning for a 9th year, because why have eligibility? Eligibility is against the workforce rights of college football players. Let's do away with eligibility and let every 34-year-old in America play college football. Every single person who petitions for a 9th year of eligibility is taking playing time away from an actual college person. Nobody ever thinks, oh, it's great. I love 9th year guys. 9th year guys in college football are stupid. We have to stop this. It's selfish. I'm sorry. Your time has passed. What are we doing? That's not what college sports is. And, like, we're in the courts now, and the courts are like, I don't know about limiting eligibility. Why should there be limits? Because you're destroying the entire sport. What are we doing?
I don't like it.
You're too old to play college football, Landis. Does that offend you?
I don't want to play. I don't want to play. I have eligibility. I've never played. I got 4 years and then some.
You're too old.
I'm not going to play.
Take that. I hate it. Okay. But anyway, so they're playing Oklahoma State in 25 and 26. They're playing Baylor in 27 and 28. So, like, we're just not like Oregon non-conference the next couple of years is going to stink. So we got to find these good games in conference to watch the Ducks, who really matter. All right. Week 13. What are we doing?
Week 13, I think you changed this up on me a little bit too, because I initially suggested Syracuse at Notre Dame, but we'll have seen them already in Notre Dame a couple of times, so I get it. So we're gonna do Arizona State at Colorado, the defending Big 12 champion and playoff Arizona State Sun Devils, coming to Boulder, and perhaps a game that could matter. We'll see what Colorado ends up being this year in the Big 12, but reasonable chance that this has some Big 12 conference stakes to it. It's Kenny Dillingham and Deion Sanders, so I'm with you. I can get behind it. Syracuse Notre Dame was another consideration. Kansas at Iowa State, Kansas State at Utah, Nebraska at Penn State, which was another interesting one, but I don't know what to make of Nebraska yet, so I get not having that. And then Illinois Wisconsin is also this week, so a couple of pretty interesting games happening, but I don't mind you giving the nod here to Arizona State, Colorado, because I think at the very least it'll be entertaining, but it also could matter tremendously.
Yeah, not a great week, actually. Like, it's kind of a weird week, and we have a chance. Like, there definitely could, depending how the Big 12 race is shaking out. Kansas, Iowa State could have more stakes. Kansas State, Utah could have more stakes. Sure. Again, if Nebraska's good, then all of a sudden Matt Rule going to State College with a good team against a Penn State team in the top 5 is all of a sudden super interesting. But otherwise, Colorado's not on our list. And I don't want to forget about Colorado just because Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders are leaving. I think they're better than that.
Yeah.
And this is a playoff team. So to get eyeballs on Arizona State, like I'm not married to this. I do like. And Syracuse, Notre Dame, again, it's just Notre Dame's playing Syracuse, Pitt, and Boston College. It's awesome. Like, there's a part of me that's like, let's go to all those.
Yeah.
But it's also part of the deal with the ACC. They're going to play ACC teams. They just happen to be playing all 3 Northern ACC teams this year. So I love that. Fran Brown, Marcus Freeman, that's a great coaching matchup. But let's get eyes on the Buffaloes. So thank you for letting me squeeze you on this a little bit.
Yeah. Where are we going for the last week?
We're going to Black Friday, Iowa at Nebraska. I think we're going to go to Black Friday, Iowa, Nebraska until they tell us to stop. So that's Friday, November 28th. Matt Rule, look, I was at this game last year in Iowa City. Matt Rule, they blew it. Iowa nails a field goal at the end of the game. Matt Rule looks like he saw a ghost.
Yeah.
So like, and he said like, we have to like this is a model. Like Nebraska, I think people want to, it's like, what can Nebraska be? It's like, well, first they have to be better than Iowa, which by the way, is a huge hurdle. It's like, oh, we need to be better than a program that wins 9 games every year. That's a lot to ask. So Matt Rule's like, that's the standard that we are not achieving yet. So the look on Matt Rule's face after they absolutely blew that game in the cold, it was a great atmosphere. These two fan bases, it's awesome. This is an awesome rivalry. And Nebraska has to get over the top at some point on this. So like this was I'm glad it's on Black Friday. They're smart about it. Iowa's won 9 of the last 10, and Nebraska hasn't won this game in Lincoln since 2011. Because the last 3 times Nebraska's won this game, it's been all at Iowa. So like this is a great game. I'm happy to go to this game every year.
It's one of the best rivalries in college football, I think. Two very like-minded fan bases. It's just fun to get together.
Then I split us again. On a Saturday for the second time. Ohio State, Michigan, but also Oregon, Washington. So I have some Ohio State, Michigan stats in a second. But I didn't want to shortchange Oregon, Washington because I want to get to Washington. And otherwise, we don't have a Washington game. So you and I split last year because I went to Farmageddon on Saturday. You went to Ohio State, Michigan. I could see us splitting this year. I'm curious. I think Washington's going to be super interesting. Damon Williams, Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston, when we do our skill player rankings, Washington has a chance to be quite high there. And I don't want to like ignore Oregon, Washington just because they're always the last weekend of the regular season and Ohio State, Michigan is huge. Yeah.
That's fair. I actually didn't realize. So Ohio State plays at Washington this year, but it's the same week as Oregon, Penn State.
So I'm interested in getting to Washington. So I'm happy to split here in service of that. So yeah. But of course, Ohio State, Michigan. I have a trivia question for you.
Okay.
When is the last time that Michigan won 5 straight against Ohio State?
Prior to Woody, like 40s,
1922 to 1927, when they won 6 straight. Because John Cooper, in going 2-10-1 against Michigan, lost 4, tied, which is not a loss. Lost 1, lost 3, won, lost 2, and got fired. So he never lost 5 straight. Now, he didn't win in his first 6. He was 0-5-1 to start, but he didn't lose 5 straight. So Michigan has beaten Ohio State 4 straight times. Ohio State, I don't know if you guys watched it all. They were the national champions. Landis, like, what is this game going to be like? This is nuts. This is going to be nuts. In Ann Arbor.
The last two national champs. The last two national champs.
The North owns college football.
Yeah, it is gonna be nuts. I do wonder if perhaps it is better for Ohio State or to try to snap this streak in Ann Arbor than it would be in Columbus, where things would get quite tense quite quickly if that game gets a little loose early on. So, yeah, I mean, I thought. Well, I don't know. I can't remember quite what I thought going into last year's game. Like, I thought Ohio State was going to win, but I didn't feel like it was going to be like a super angsty game just because of how much better I thought Ohio State was than Michigan. And maybe Ohio State stands a pretty good chance of being considerably better than Michigan again this coming season, but probably a closer matchup on paper on the field than this past season was, and Michigan won that game anyway. So, yeah, all the stakes and narrative you could possibly want are going to be involved in this game. At the end of
Do you think season. This will be Julian Sand versus Bryce Underwood by this point?
Yeah, I do. I don't think, and maybe it's quite possible that I'll be wrong. I don't think Michigan's going to throw Bryce Underwood into the fire right away. I think Mikey Keene will start the season at quarterback for Michigan, and then Bryce Underwood will take over at some point. But it will happen by this game. I think it'll be Sand versus Underwood.
So we're heading to 20 different sites with this schedule. This schedule is from week 0 to week 14, so it's 15 weeks. We're going to 22 games. We're going to 20 sites. We're going to Ireland, Kansas City, and Miami as our sort of non-home games for the North, right?
Sister cities, all three of them. Yeah.
Yeah. We're only going to 2 stadiums twice. We're going to Ohio State twice for Texas and Penn State, which are arguably the 2 biggest games of the college football season. We can't get away from that. And we're going to BYU twice just because West Virginia at BYU is a Friday night game by itself. So why not put that on our schedule? And then we're going to Holy War.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, we're also going to Michigan State, West Virginia, Indiana, Penn State, Notre Dame, Illinois, Kansas, Syracuse, Boston College, Rutgers, Oregon, Colorado, Nebraska, Michigan, and Washington. So that's good. And then seeing our teams, this schedule, I think it's pretty fair. And I care about fairness, except when it's Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Then I'll just call them grumpy and robots. Ohio State, 4 times on this schedule. The defending national champs get 4. Notre Dame, Penn State, Oregon, 3. The 2 semifinalists and the team that was number 1 second half of the year. The only undefeated team during the regular season gets 3. Fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Nebraska, Kansas State, Illinois, West Virginia, Boston College, BYU get 2. 1 appearance each on the Ultimate Northern schedule. Michigan only 1, which I feel terrible about. That's wrong.
Yeah.
And to not see Michigan until week 14 is wrong. So whether it's the Nebraska at Michigan game, whether it's bailing on Michigan State, Boston College, now we're not seeing Michigan State at all, but we're getting to Michigan, Oklahoma. And again, it's made up. So like this made up thing makes me feel bad inside. But because in real life, you're allowed to watch Boston College, Michigan State, and Oklahoma, Michigan. You're allowed to watch them the same weekend. It's okay.
That's right. Yeah.
And in real life, we're probably not flying to Oklahoma for that game. So it's just the importance that we're putting on it. Michigan is only 1. Also 1, Syracuse, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Michigan State, Pitt, Minnesota, Kansas, Utah, Indiana, Washington, Iowa, Colorado, Maryland, Rutgers. And then there's 3 teams. Do you know the 3 teams that didn't make the schedule?
Northwestern.
Yep.
Purdue.
Yep.
And is it another Big Ten team?
Wisconsin. And I do think those were our 3 lowest teams in our performance reviews. So you don't get on the schedule. Like that's kind of your punishment. So maybe earn it back. And also, so I'm still super curious. I am definitely going to get to a Northwestern game because I'm curious to see that they're playing for the second year on the Lake Phil in the temporary stadium. And then it'll be very interesting to see Northwestern's new stadium in 2026. But they did Oregon, Northwestern, Michigan at Wrigley would have been interesting. Purdue is just, you've got to prove that you matter. And Wisconsin's going to Alabama. We're not going to Tuscaloosa. And then otherwise, Wisconsin has to prove that they're worth our time, which I don't think that's too much to ask. We have a lot of good teams to cover, Landis. So you've got to prove that you're worth our time.
You know who comes to Ross 8 this year, though, if you do want to go to Purdue. If you want to go in September, your guy Bambi is going to be there.
No. Oh, man.
September 13th, USC at Purdue.
Can I tell you how good it makes me feel that we base our show on geography, not conferences, and it allows us to completely ignore USC.
You didn't watch Rob Ryan's introductory press conference?
Oh my God.
Where he
What is that?
like a madman?
Who is that? Well, I mean, I know who it is. What's he doing there?
Defensive line, I think.
What? Are they serious?
I was actually looking at their coaching staff. Their defensive coaching staff is actually kind of impressive.
Congrats.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Anton Lynn, because they stole him from across town?
Yeah, Penn State alum, Dan Lynn. Yeah. Shane Newell, I think, is one of the defensive line coaches who was at Michigan for a while. Now you're making me look it up because I was looking at it the other day. Rob Ryan.
No.
Yeah.
You don't have to look. Lincoln Riley makes $10 million a year and his team stinks. God, I'm so glad that we're able to treat them as the non-factor mocking team that they deserve to be. Can you imagine if you and I were on here USC, they're a friend of the North. I really think this might be their year. What a joke that would be. Show us something. Show us something. What have they shown us? They're for real. Can you believe how bad they are?
I love how bad they are. They open, while we're talking about them, they open with Missouri State and Georgia Southern at home, and then they go to Purdue. Is Clay Helton the coach at Georgia Southern? Or is he at Georgia State?
I don't know. Georgia something. Godfrey would know. I don't care.
He is at Georgia Southern. Clay Helton is going to coach in the Coliseum this year.
Clay Helton's going to blow the doors off of Lincoln Riley, and Rob Ryan will be the interim coach by the time they get to West Lafayette. Oh my God. What a. Okay. We could do that as a show. The teams we are prepared to be most annoyed by in 2025. Lincoln Riley and Bill Belichick are in a dead heat right now at the front of the pack. Oh, man. Good luck to everybody. Bambi and the Grump. Oh, I don't have sleeves on my sweatshirt.
The Buddy Cop movie.
I love our teams, and I hate everybody else. All right. Congratulations. You're not wearing a bird shirt. You're a professional.
No, I wore green, and you can see the makings of a bird's helmet behind me there next to Jim Thorpe. That's enough.
Nice. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll be back on Wednesday with another show. Tell a friend. We're talking about the North. I was the Ultimate Northern Schedule. Where are you going to get that, Landis? Where are you going to get the Ultimate Northern Schedule if not here? Nowhere else. All right. We'll see you in Ireland. Thanks as always to Mike Yarostowski, our producer, for making us look good and sound good. We'll see you on Wednesday. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.